or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Corrine, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the August 3rd, 2026 issue of the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. As always, thank you for joining us today. The highlights under Business and Finance are: Sony Pictures' Spider-Man Brand New Day opened to an estimated $927 million in global box office sales, making it the second biggest film debut ever. Math majors and PhDs are securing million-dollar pay deals from elite trading firms seeking to recruit the best and brightest amid fierce competition from AI companies. Major American oil companies have made little headway in tapping Venezuela's oil fields 7 months after the U.S. deposed strongman Nicolas Maduro. The first formal negotiations intended to steer Venezuela toward democracy kicked off without the political opposition's most influential leader. OPEC and its allies pressed ahead with another increase in oil production, aiming to complete the group's return of voluntarily withheld barrels to the market. Flight attendants at WSJ, Canada's second-largest airline, walked off the job after failing to reach an agreement with the carrier, grounding hundreds of flights. A group of former gaming executives are offering the gaming community the chance to power clean energy projects through a new PlayStation service that costs $34.99 a year or $3.99 a month. OpenAI said it has more than 1 billion active users and 2 million businesses using its artificial intelligence models, an announcement that came after the company said it would cut the price of several models. Now for the articles from the worldwide section. Trump refrained from a new attack on Iran as mediators made fresh progress on a plan to open the Strait of Hormuz, and some Persian Gulf states pressed the president to pursue dialogue with Tehran. California's Democratic Party endorsed the state's proposed billionaire tax in a win for its advocates 3 months before Californians vote on the measure. A divisive Democratic primary for Senate in Michigan on Tuesday will reveal whether a progressive and socialist groundswell has spread to the U.S. heartland. The suspect in a shooting at an In-N-Out Burger in Twin Falls, Idaho, was a 24-year-old who died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Wildfires destroyed hundreds of homes and forced thousands of people to evacuate in eastern Washington state. Trump rebuked Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, after she dropped her effort to prosecute a man for allegedly vandalizing the reflecting pool. Spain expelled most of the tens of thousands of migrants who stormed into its enclave of Ceuta in North Africa. A dispute involving domestic abuse allegations against Ohio Representative Max Miller was further aired when Senator Bernie Moreno said his former son-in-law shouldn't continue to serve in Congress. At least 5 were killed and dozens were missing in a ferry fire in Indonesia. The picture on today's front page shows men on the ground battling a fierce fire. And that caption reads, "Dire Battle." Volunteers on Sunday worked to douse a wildfire near Porto Germano, about 40 miles northwest of Athens. 2 Greek firefighting helicopters collided on Sunday while battling a wind-driven fire, killing 2 crew members. And that headline, "Greece Fights Wildfires as Europe Crisis Spreads." The article, "Copters Fighting Wildfires Collide." 2 Greek firefighting helicopters collided in midair Sunday as they were battling a wind-driven wildfire west of Athens, sending 1 aircraft crashing to the ground. 2 crew members, a Greek and a Danish national, died. The collision laid bare the danger at the most volatile front of Europe's wildfire emergency. Strong winds drove flames deeper into the region of the Greek capital and forced fresh evacuation. France guarded a still-burning scar 4 times the size of Paris, while Spain's major fires stopped advancing. The aircraft were Bell helicopters operating over the Satha area west of Athens, each with a 2-person crew. Other articles from the front page follow. Democrats' biggest donors shun main party committee. DNC coffers can't match GOP's haul as backers are giving directly to candidates. By Maggie Severance, Laura J. Nelson, and Ken Thomas. George Soros and his son Alex donated more than $400,000 to the Democratic National Committee during the 2018 midterms. They gave more than $1 million during the 2022 election cycle, campaign finance records show. This year, they have yet to give the DNC $1. The Soroses aren't alone. Other high-profile donors have given little or no money to the Democrats' Central Committee this year. Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, wrote steady checks to the DNC for years, but during the midterms has yet to give money. In a sign of the party's challenges, a running joke among some donors is that the DNC stands for Do Not Contribute, said one Democratic strategist who advises major party donors. Months ahead of midterm elections, the Democratic fundraising apparatus has a big donor problem. While many Democratic elites still feel bullish about taking back the House and are willing to throw big money at their favorite candidates, institutional fatigue, and in some cases, full-on drama, have set in among a number of the party's biggest donors. Like voters, donors say they feel disillusioned with Washington and the party establishment they have long supported. The DNC isn't the only problem spot for Democrats. Other Democratic committees and super PACs lag behind Republicans across the board. It is common for a party that is out of power in Washington to struggle. But Democrats are increasingly concerned it will hurt their chances of winning this fall as Republicans stack up more money in committees and PACs that can organize door knocking and air TV ads. Some of the problem is the lingering frustration among major donors over how their money was spent in the 2024 presidential election, when nominee Kamala Harris raised more than $1 billion, but still lost after a rushed process to nominate her. Others point to the divisions in the Democratic Party's donor base over the war in Gaza and an insurgent group of Democratic Socialists. Rufus Gifford, a former fundraiser for Harris and Barack Obama, put himself on the map last week as a major critic of DNC Chairman Ken Martin when he penned a Substack post saying Martin should step down. Defenders of the DNC and other committees say their fundraising levels are comparable to past similar cycles. The DNC raised more money by the end of June 2026 than it had raised during the same period in the 2017 to 18 cycle, when Democrats were similarly out of power in Washington. Gulf allies sway U.S. in pivot to talks with Iran. Trump calls off escalation of strikes after mediators offer new Hormuz plan. By Michael R. Gordon, Alexander Ward, and Philip Wegman. President Trump held off on a new attack on Iran as mediators made fresh progress on a plan to open the strategic Strait of Hormuz, and some Persian Gulf states pressed the president to pursue dialogue with Tehran, people familiar with the matter said. Trump's abrupt announcement on social media, posted early Sunday in the Middle East, that he had called off the strikes eased tensions between the U.S. and Iran, at least for the moment. The question now is whether Trump's Gulf partners can make enough headway in the days ahead to reopen the strait to shipping and lay the groundwork for eventual talks on Iran's nuclear ambitions. Previous efforts on both fronts have failed for months, though there were initial signs of progress Sunday on reopening the waterway. Oman and Iran noted they were making progress. Trump said the U.S. would engage in talks beginning Monday afternoon. He said that he had been prepared to launch the biggest military attack since World War II, but had been talked down by U.S. allies. We were all set to go, but when the allies asked to call it off, you got to sort of say, well, let's see, he said. Still, if talks falter, as they have in the past, Trump could once again fall into a familiar cycle of reviving his military threats shortly after he shelved them. He is trying his hand now at a diplomatic solution to avoid military escalation, but there's no clear path, either diplomatically or militarily, to get Trump to a place where he can declare victory, said Vali Nasser, an Iran expert at Johns Hopkins University. This cycle has destabilized the Middle East and complicated the domestic agenda for Trump, a Republican. Iran in recent weeks has carried out attacks on a number of U.S. allies in the region, including Jordan, Bahrain, and Kuwait, while its proxies in Iraq have launched drones at Saudi Arabia. Iran's ability to essentially shut down the Strait of Hormuz has pushed up the price of gasoline and forced the U.S. and other countries to eat into their oil reserves. Meanwhile, Republicans in Congress, with just 3 months until the midterm elections, have pressed the White House to better articulate the goals for the Iran war and explain how it will end. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Real World Got in Way of Moguls Nation Building by Stu Wu and Patricia Kausman. Iskander Puteri, Malaysia. Tech founder Balaji Srinivasan says he believes the U.S. is descending into anarchy. His solution was to build a new country from scratch. He left Silicon Valley and, as a first step, tried to create a rival tech community in Asia. He set up a campus with co-working spaces, a high-end gym, and meals designed by longevity guru Byron Johnson. He surveyed potential residents on their views on politics and pro-natalism, the high birth rate philosophy Srinivasan promotes. Byron Johnson wants to live forever. Sam Altman wants to build a machine of superintelligence. Elon wants to get to Mars. Srinivasan said on a recent podcast, "I just want to start a new country." The setting for this experiment was as surreal as it was grand. A hotel in a 100 billion Chinese-built luxury development in Malaysia that became a mostly empty ghost city. Now, 2 years in, his vision, called the Network School, is colliding with the real world. Participants complained about moldy rooms, dead nightlife, and not enough women, a downside similar to Silicon Valley. Then came an even bigger hurdle, the actual country in which they were living. Malaysian authorities launched an investigation into the school's residents after an Instagram post said the project housed citizens from Israel. Muslim majority Malaysia doesn't officially recognize that state and requires Israelis to get special permission to enter the country. Authorities said they haven't found wrongdoing. But last week, the local government ordered the project to shut down over unrelated licensing issues. Within hours, Srinivasan said on social media that he had signed an agreement to open a campus in Kazakhstan. In a response to questions for this article, Srinivasan wrote on X that the Instagram post was a hoax and that we respect Malaysia's sovereignty and are abiding by all Malaysian law. He said mildew is a common regional issue his team fixes as necessary. People came to the network school for self-improvement rather than partying, and there were plenty of women, he added. We are absolutely not simply for the tech bro, but for the tech dad, tech mom, tech family, and tech children, Srinivasan said. Srinivasan said the network school may get its own special economic zone, or we may build an artificial island from reclaimed land off the shore of a willing country, or we may even accompany Elon to Mars. In his 2022 book, The Network State, Srinivasan offered a peaceful alternative, saying it is better to build new societies from scratch. His playbook: first, people with shared beliefs form an online community. Next, members help each other earn money, pool funds to acquire land, and once big enough, seek recognition as a state. Trail of missteps in Guthrie case. 6 months after kidnapping, investigators have made little progress. By Valerie Bauerlein, Jared Matovich, and Hannah Critchfield. Tucson, Arizona. Savannah Guthrie, the co-host of America's longest-running TV morning show, hoisted her mother onto the national stage in November, drawing millions of viewers with a moving video tribute to her family and hometown of Tucson, Arizona. I grew up there, went to college there. My mom still lives there, Savannah told her Today Show audience in the November 5th broadcast. It was the most elaborate of a half dozen previous episodes that cast a spotlight on her mother, Nancy Guthrie. Honestly, a part of me has really never left, said Savannah, the family's youngest child. The video led viewers on an 8-minute tour of Savannah's past. During a stop at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum, an owl perched on her gloved arm made her squeal like the girl she had been during her first visit there in grade school. Savannah crossed the town to the University of Arizona, her alma mater, and strode the quad in sunglasses and a sundress, trailed by the marching band playing the school's fight song, Bear Down, Arizona. This long article continues with their many traditions. Savannah spent the last show before her mother's abduction promoting the Winter Olympics. She took a leave of absence to be in Tucson with her siblings, serving as the family's liaison with authorities. She returned to Today on April 6, determined to solve her mother's abduction by leveraging her TV fame and coast-to-coast reach, the same lofty platform she worried might have drawn the attention of Nancy Guthrie's kidnappers. In a TV interview, Savannah, 54, revealed her fear and sorrow about what she might have risked by showcasing her mother to the wider world. Was it because of me? Did I bring them to her bedside? The department's first missing person call in the case was logged on 12:03 p.m. on Sunday, February 1st, according to a timeline provided by authorities. Annie Guthrie, Nancy's middle child, said Nancy had been at their house Saturday for dinner and games, days after celebrating her 84th birthday. Annie's husband drove Nancy home and watched the garage door close behind her at 9:50 p.m., the last time she was seen by anyone but her kidnappers. Annie told the deputies she had gone to check on her mother after a friend called to say that Nancy hadn't arrived for her Sunday visit. Once inside her home, Annie was frightened by what she found: her mother's purse and iPhone, items Nancy always kept close at hand. A back door was left propped open. Around 2 p.m., the sheriff's department lead supervisor on the scene texted Nanos, alerting him to a missing person case. Annie and her siblings didn't believe it. Their mother was mentally sharp but physically frail, barely able to walk to the mailbox and back, they told authorities. Annie pointed out that the Nest camera was missing. Something is wrong, the supervisor told Nanos in a text minutes later. We're calling homicide. The head of homicide, Sergeant David Stivers, was reprimanded 2 months before Nancy's kidnapping for poor judgment, blamed for delays securing crime scene evidence in a homicide case, personnel records from public records request show. Charges in the homicide case were dropped for insufficient evidence. Stivers and his detectives arrived at Nancy's house in the late afternoon. For hours they gave little regard to the dried blood on the front porch, said people familiar with the investigation. They suspected the blood might have come from some unrelated head bump, nosebleed, or other incidental injury, the people said. Detectives worked to collect evidence, including blood samples. A DNA analysis later confirmed the blood was Nancy's, and it is now believed connected to her kidnapping. At 4 p.m., sheriff's deputies contacted volunteers to help search the neighborhood. The sheriff's department launched drones. Border Patrol agents went out with search dogs. Yet the sheriff's most powerful search and rescue tool was delayed for hours. The department's $1.7 million Cessna surveillance aircraft, equipped with both infrared and zoom lens cameras. The problem was finding a flight deputy to operate the camera systems. The senior pilot, assigned the Sunday shift, was demoted days earlier to patrol duty following a workplace complaint. Flight data showed that the plane began its search at around 6:30 p.m. By then it was getting too dark for its zoom lens cameras to be of much use. Deputies also failed to seal off the Guthrie property with police crime scene tape, a standard protocol. Detectives in an electronic message asked neighbors to review their doorbell camera footage, yet they asked only for hours from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sunday. Nancy's pacemaker had stopped sending signals over Bluetooth hours earlier at 2:28 a.m. On Monday night, the CBS affiliate in Tucson received an online ransom note on the station's tip line. It began, "Hello, Savannah, we have your mother, Nancy." The sender used a masked IP address to render the message untraceable. On Friday, the family received a second message. "We never intended to hurt her," it said. "We are truly sorry." By then, the family knew the tragic contents of the second note. Nancy Guthrie wouldn't be found alive. This very long article details all the miscues that occurred. On February 24th, Savannah posted a video on Instagram announcing a $1 million reward for information leading to her mother's recovery. The second ransom note provided the sole clue. She is buried in nature now. Savannah made public pleas on Monday and again on Saturday, 6 months after her mother was taken. "I'm asking you, begging you, to do the right thing now," she said. "Tell us where to look for her." Leaving the front page, oil giants trying to get into Venezuela hit a wall, by Colin Eaton and Javal Villas. 7 months after the U.S. deposed Nicolas Maduro, large oil companies have yet to make any big moves in Venezuela. ExxonMobil, Chevron, and other major oil companies are fighting for a small number of the country's most attractive drilling spots. But some of the talks with Venezuelan leaders have hit an impasse, according to people familiar with the negotiations. President Trump and his lieutenants had high hopes that big U.S. oil companies would quickly sign investment deals to kickstart production in Venezuela, home to some of the world's largest reserves. They see the country's rising oil exports as a boom to U.S. supplies, while Iran hobbles shipping lanes in the Middle East that typically carry 20% of the world's oil and gas. The administration is also putting pressure on interim President Delcy Rodriguez to boost Venezuela's production quickly before the end of Trump's second term. Among the issues that have handicapped any big deals, major U.S. oil producers are interested in many of the same prize assets, including fields in the eastern Venezuela Orinoco Belt and the northeastern state of Monagas, and they want to secure the most favorable fiscal and regulatory terms possible. The earthquake that shook the country last month also slowed the progress. California billionaire tax gains Democrat support by Paul Kiernan, Los Angeles. California's Democratic Party has endorsed the state's proposed billionaire tax, marking a win for its advocates 3 months before Californians vote on the measure. At a weekend meeting of hundreds of party officials, the tax proposal on Sunday cleared the 60% of the votes needed to overcome objections and land the endorsement, according to a party spokeswoman. California voters will decide whether to approve or reject the ballot initiative in November. If it takes effect, the state's roughly 200 billionaires will pay a 5% one-time levy. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. From the opinion pages, Anthony Fauci unmasks himself. His diaries make clear that he saw the pandemic less as a historic emergency than a media opportunity. By Peggy Noonan. It wasn't good for Anthony Fauci or anybody else that he took the fifth at his Senate hearing last week. That, plus his diary, may well have been a reputation-destroying event. It was obviously his right as a citizen to invoke the protections of the Constitution, and he surely had his reasons. But everyone who takes the fifth knows what it looks like. It's the early 60s. We're at congressional hearings on La Cosa Nostra, and the head of one of the 5 families is fiddling with his diamond pinky ring as he asserts his right not to incriminate himself. Dr. Fauci is the man who ran the pandemic response in America. He was the face of it. When you have been appointed, in effect, to lead a nation through a disaster, you owe that nation a full and frequent accounting. To seem to dodge is unbecoming. He has already been given a sweeping presidential pardon by Joe Biden. In the time after and not covered by that pardon, he owes it to the public to speak truthfully. It would have been good to hear Dr. Fauci, now 85, distill what the entire pandemic experience was and what it did to us as a society. What could have been done to make its management better? What decisions, in retrospect, made it worse? Looking back, did he or others, in their newfound ascendancy, get carried away? On reflection, is there any justice to the charge they became power drunk? Dr. Fauci's pandemic diary, released this week, was also damaging. When I heard of its existence, I thought, good. What history most needs is first-person testimony, the more the better, in real time, if possible. I thought of Samuel Pepys, a senior government administrator for the British Navy in his late 20s and 30s, whose diary gave history the finest first-person reporting on 2 different cataclysms that hit London, the Great Fire of 1666 and the Great Plague the year before. Pepys watched the Great Fire from the Tower of London near where he lived and came to grasp, with shock, the size and scale of it. In a famous passage on September 2nd, 1666, he described seeing poor people staying in their houses as long as till the very fire touched them, and then running into boats or clambering from one pair of stairs by the waterside to another. And among other things, the poor pigeons, I perceive, were loth to leave their houses, but hovered about the windows and balconies till they were, some of them, burned, their wings, and fell down. Pepys recorded all the chaos around him. His writing was jagged and real time. He reported what he'd seen to King Charles II. He was also an eyewitness to the Great Plague of 1665, which took an estimated 100,000 lives, about a fourth of London's population, in 18 months. He records empty streets and carts collecting the dead. On June 7, 1665, Pepys passes the homes of the quarantined. This day, much against my will, I did in Drury Lane see 2 or 3 houses marked with a red cross upon the doors, and Lord have mercy upon us, writ there. He was pained and frightened. He'd never seen such a thing. With this frame, alas, I read the first 5 months of Dr. Fauci's pandemic diary. As has been reported, it isn't about witnessing or capturing the size and scale of a crisis or feeling shock or anxiety. It is about other things. On January 6, 2020, he goes to a Super A-list party. At a meeting later that month, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi hugs and kisses him and tells everyone how great I am. At another, President Trump tells Dr. Fauci, Lou Dobbs told me that you were one of the smartest, knowledgeable, and outstanding persons he knows. Dr. Fauci was very pleased. Others stunned and impressed. January 30th, all my friends kept saying I am a national hero and that they felt safe in my arms. March 8th, nice profiles of me in Political and New York Times Today. March 15th, I did all 5 Sunday shows today, my 3rd Fauci 5. Apparently, this is his version of the full Ginsburg, named for Monica Lewinsky's attorney, William Ginsburg, when he did 5 Sunday shows in one morning. March 26, donuts are being named after me. T-shirts have my picture on them. April 7th, press still hot and heavy about me. May 21st, POTUS seems to be enamored of me. That's before he gets to the movie star sending him flowers. In one sense, it screams 7 deadly sins. He gave in to his pride. But it also makes the history in which he took such a big part look banal and inhuman. Your historic emergency is his media opportunity. A deeper criticism is that in the diary, he doesn't seem at all humbled by the role in which he's been cast or by his responsibilities. I saw no deep reflection on the sufferings of his countrymen. He doesn't see the red crosses on the door. He attaches clippings of or links to fawning newspaper profiles and columns, but not to stories about what was happening in the civilian population of his country as it went through a crisis. The sweep and detail of Pip's diary captures the spirit of his age, the Restoration. Let's hope the flatness and self-adulation of Anthony Fauci's doesn't capture ours. I end with a thought that may seem extreme, but I think there's some degree of truth in it. Looking back on the public leadership aspect of the pandemic, while we were in the trauma and fear of the first months, while we were banging pots at 7 p.m. to think hospital workers and scientists were Zooming to find out more about treatments and protocols, and earnest medical officials were showing up on cable explaining what they believed to be true, a lot of people tried to do a lot of good things. But it all became pretty political pretty fast, pretty incendiary and groupthinky, and pretty smug as the previously obscure became famous overnight. It all came together and yielded a little societal Chernobyl. The reactor blew, causing a calamity. The politicians lied and couldn't be trusted. The bureaucrats lied and couldn't be trusted. The government scientists lied about the data in front of their eyes. The national press was a propaganda machine. As much as anything, Chernobyl contributed to the toppling of the Soviet Union. Looking back on the COVID crisis, a lot of professionals were trusted beyond the point they deserved. So were many politicians. As people on the ground in America rose up against lockdowns, closed schools, mask mandates, closed churches, they were often unheard or heard slowly, reluctantly, and disrespectfully. The medical and scientific establishment didn't seem to be a part of the public anymore, but handling the public. And by the end, a lot of people thought they couldn't trust the politicians and couldn't trust the scientists. My fear is that next time, and there likely will be a next time, regular people will think, there's no one to trust. We're on our own. That won't be a good thing. From the editorial page, Trump's latest Iran deal. He again calls off the military escalation he threatened, with little detail disclosed. A friend quipped the other day that President Trump truly deserves the Nobel Peace Prize because he has already ended the Iran war 8 times. Will the 9th time be the charm after his latest decision to call off a military escalation in search of a deal with the revolutionary regime? We have just been asked by Iran and other Middle Eastern countries to hold off any attack in that the perimeters of a deal has been agreed to, Mr. Trump posted at 10:05 p.m. on Saturday. He added that this includes immediate, complete, and total opening of the Strait of Hormuz and an end to Iran's nuclear program. Mr. Trump offered no other details. It also isn't clear how this miraculous turn of events happened so quickly after Mr. Trump had been building all week to a military response. Journal reporters said Friday Mr. Trump had made a decision to escalate. Saudi Arabia's national news agency reported that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had asked Mr. Trump to stand down, perhaps fearful that its oil facilities and tankers would become a target of Iran in the Gulf and Iran's Houthi proxy in the Red Sea. If that's true, it's another sign that Iran now has escalation dominance in this conflict. Iran hasn't said much as we write this, and leaks from negotiators suggest the familiar confusing intercessions from Oman and Qatar. It seems unlikely that Iran has agreed to much on its nuclear program after the June 17th Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, offered little in the way of concessions. As for the Strait, Mr. Trump's latest threats of escalation followed Iran's attacks on shipping that tried to pass without its permission, as well as an unprovoked missile attack last week on a U.S. base in Jordan. By now it's clear that this up and down, back and forth, from war of annihilation to peace in our time, is Mr. Trump's chaotic way of war. He may think it keeps the enemy guessing, but it also keeps the American public unsure of what his war aims are or how he hopes to achieve them. No wonder the polls show voters have soured on the war. If Mr. Trump did restart the bombing, it isn't even clear what his strategic purpose would be, other than hoping that it would cause the regime to sign what he calls a deal. It's been clear since Mr. Trump agreed to a ceasefire in April that he wants out of the war. He's worried about the impact on the economy from higher oil prices, or, as he memorably put it, becoming the next Herbert Hoover. He also wants lower gas prices going into the midterm election, especially as his approval rating falls below Joe Biden's and Barack Obama's at a comparable period in their terms. Iran's regime knows signals of weakness when it hears them. It interpreted the poorly drafted MOU as an opening to let it control the strait and has kept taunting Mr. Trump with attacks on U.S. allies and bases. Mr. Trump lashes out with a tit-for-tat bombing response that so far hasn't caused Iran to bend. Iran also knows Mr. Trump is surrounded by advisors who didn't want the president to attack Iran at all and now want the conflict over on nearly any available terms. His aides think the cost of further fighting is higher than the damage to U.S. and Mr. Trump's credibility from a ceasefire that sees the initiative in the Gulf to Iran. The death of Senator Lindsey Graham removed a rare hawkish counselor. Has Iran now finally agreed to terms that can plausibly be called a U.S. victory, as Mr. Trump's Truth Social post suggested? Recall that when the MOU was signed, Mr. Trump's negotiators hailed the result and claimed the regime had turned a new leaf, as Vice President J.D. Vance put it, and wanted to become a normal country, despite 47 years of promoting terror and regional revolution. As ever, it pays to watch what Iran does, not what the regime and Mr. Trump say it will do. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the August 3rd issue of the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Socialist Chic and the Medicare for All Sham by Alicia Finley. A friend recently observed that many young, relatively affluent people in his New York City neighborhood, which voted heavily for Zohran Mamdani, dress like hobos and support Carhartt workwear, call it socialist chic. The sartorial style is also an apt metaphor for patrician progressives who feign solidarity with the proletariat. Consider Abu el-Sayed, the left-wing front-runner in Michigan's Democratic Senate primary this Tuesday. Mr. El-Sayed has surged to the lead against Representative Haley Stevens by presenting himself as a man of the people. He has called for free child care, Medicare for all, and an 8% wealth tax on billionaires. I don't think that our system should be in the business of creating billionaires, he said during a March debate. I think our system should be in the business of empowering everyday folks to be able to live a life with access to basic dignities that they need and deserve: good housing, good health care, affordable food. Nobody can disagree with the latter goals, but Mr. El Said's prescriptions to achieve them would expand government control of health care and the private economy, and exacerbate the social economic inequalities he inveighs against. Mr. El Said, 41, earned a doctorate in public health from Oxford University and a medical degree from Columbia, though he didn't complete an internship and isn't licensed to practice medicine. Instead of caring for patients, he has spent his career nurturing ties to progressive groups. My career has never been about trying to maximize on money. Otherwise, I would have just gone and been a surgeon, he said in June. Still, he hasn't done too shabbily. He and his wife, Sarah Jukaku, earned $686,069 in income last year, according to a financial disclosure report he released last month. That would rank him among Michigan's top 1% of earners. The couple made $262,299 from capital gains, which he said came from the sale of a property that his wife's parents bought for them. His disclosure also noted additional income of $292,881 from his podcast, America Dissected, and his wife's psychiatric practice. His podcast claims to explore what's really making us sick and what we'll need to take on, be it racism, corporate capitalism, or snake oil salesmen, to keep all of us healthy. Mr. El Said and his wife also own between $882,000 and $2.2 million in assets, which include 3 rental properties, one of which his wife recently acquired in Dubai. Nobody should begrudge Mr. El Said his modest fortune, but why should he begrudge billionaires theirs? The left-wing candidate in recent days has tried to distance himself from the Democratic Socialist of America, perhaps because he worries the label will alienate voters in November. I am not a socialist, Mr. El Said said. I'm just a capitalist who understands how capitalism works. You wouldn't know it from his policy agenda. He does know how to make money selling snake oil. In 2021, he co-authored a book, Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide, with a foreword by Senator Bernie Sanders. The catchphrase Medicare for All is misleading. What Mr. El Said proposes isn't universal Medicare, but a single-payer system with no premiums, deductibles, or cost sharing. Medicare has all of the above. All seniors who don't also qualify for Medicaid have to pay a monthly Medicare Part B premium starting at $202.90 a month and tied to income. Seniors who enroll in traditional Medicare fee-for-service also have a $1,736 deductible for inpatient hospital care, steep cost-sharing requirements, and no limit on out-of-pocket spending. They also have to purchase separate prescription drug plans whose monthly premiums range from $0 to $239. About 40% of seniors in traditional Medicare buy supplemental insurance policies to cover benefits like dental and vision care not provided by the government and for protection against catastrophic cost. Seniors also have the choice of enrolling in private, federalized, subsidized Medicare Advantage insurance plans. About half of Medicare beneficiaries and most of those with lower incomes enroll in Advantage plans because they provide comprehensive coverage at lower costs than fee for service. Mr. El Said wants to eliminate these plans. Yet, he slickly pitches Medicare for All as an antidote to America's myriad health care ailments, which are largely caused by government policies. He complains that lower-income Americans struggle to access doctors. But that's primarily because of the Obamacare Medicaid expansion and low government reimbursement rates for physicians. Mr. El Said's idealized system resembles Medicaid, in which patients can wait months to see specialists. In single-payer systems in other countries where the government rations care, wait times are even worse. The Royal College of Emergency Medicine recently reported 15,860 avoidable deaths last year associated with long delays for Britain's National Health Service. The wealthy in countries with nationalized health systems can usually expedite care by paying out of pocket to see physicians, while the hoi polloi are consigned to long waits for substandard care. Like the rest of the socialist agenda, Medicare for All is a sham. Letters to the editor, thanks to the billionaires. I loved Rob Arnott's op-ed, "Thank you for your success," he said. He said that I have said thank God for people like Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and everyone who has brought us technology to improve our lives. I grew up with telephone party lines in the 60s, snail mail, and reading physical newspapers, books, and magazines. There were no cell phones, no computers. I never begrudge anyone who is a millionaire or billionaire his money. He or she has developed vital products for the masses. By Martina Cansavalis, Morton Grove, Illinois. Another, who wins in a rent freeze? William McGurn has it right, except he omits one thing. It sure looks like the ultimate goal of Zoran Mandani's efforts is to confiscate negligent landlords' properties who've been left with no financially viable way to maintain their buildings and to give the properties to nonprofit groups, NGOs, and land trust. Freezing the rent without freezing operating cost will create a lot of potential targets. By James Bianco, Yonkers, New York. This has been the August 3rd edition of the Wall Street Journal, read by Corrine.